Hello, 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 and welcome to today's episode of Her Version. This podcast is dedicated to sharing stories of struggle and triumph, a platform that allows individuals to tell their truth in order to inspire and uplift others. For those of you that are new to this podcast and like content like this, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Make sure you follow, like, and share. I am your host, Sabrina Victoria. Let's jump right in. Hello, and thank you for joining us today for this episode of Her Version. Welcome those that are already jumping on to listen to Miss Candace's story. The Her Version podcast is built on storytelling and the understanding that many times our greatest learning experiences come from listening to other people's stories. Today, I have Miss Candace Sheppard on here with us to share her story on how she was able to slowly grow her voice and her confidence. She no longer apologizes for her power. She is the founder of Confidence That Converts and is here to help you destroy limiting beliefs that are hindering your future so you can create a powerful one. You know, when individuals who are in their darkness or in their struggle right now, it's really easy to get on right now, as we have people listening right now and be like, oh, cool, cool story.
Right.
But her story's different than my story.
Mm-hmm.
Her story isn't as bad as my story. She doesn't have exactly what I had. Can you share with us, to give an example of an experience, a failure, a struggle, a specific one that you specifically went through, and how you're looking at it now, what you learned from that experience, to give people an actual idea of how this works?
Absolutely. So the first thing that I want to clarify when it comes to pain is that pain is something that is qualified by one person's threshold, right? A lot of times we're looking for different ways to compare and contrast, but perhaps the pain you went through would have been the thing that absolutely crippled me, right? Or vice versa, right? Depending on the way we came up, how our environment groomed us and what have you. So I want to clarify that helps keep us from looking for a reason to disqualify what someone is saying to us.
Yes.
At the core.
Now,
with biggest failures, the first one that comes to mind is my marriage, right? Which I shared about previously. And the reason why it was the biggest failure, which is the second part of what I want to spotlight about comparing pain, I shared a summary of my pain. I have not even gone into the deep depths of all the things that I've gone through. And so the biggest thing for me, outside of the pain of failing in my marriage, I use that term loosely, right? Because I believe failure is feedback. I don't believe it's something that keeps us from going forward, right?
100.
Right. Was that I lost my health in the middle of the battle with my husband.
Yeah.
Okay. So the pain that came from that was I went into it with my eyes completely open, my arms completely open. I was ready for whatever it was going to bring. And the frustration, or the thing that for a long time I used to shame and blame myself over getting into the relationship to begin with, was that I didn't recognize that that was not the consciousness he was in the relationship.
Wow.
Okay. So there was that pain. Then there was the pain of I'm trapped, so to speak. Okay. We're not trapped. Right? Like, God does not ask us to stay in these relationships that absolutely deteriorate, ruin, destroy what he created to be a blessing to us. This is my belief, right? And so that processing, that mentality of dealing with all of the compound failures from that. I chose wrong, even though I did everything right, right? We were celibate before we got married. We did not have children. This is according to society, right? That there's a better way to do this. Like, please, okay, please. And if we're going to have a real conversation, like, any people who are doing it right from the start are still getting it wrong. Let's just put that on out there, right? Let's just equalize everything. So there was that. I had all of that in my head. That was the conditioning that everything was going to work out and be perfect.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
There was so
I
many.
know people with this story.
Listen.
Yeah.
Okay. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. And so this is part of my purpose. I believe I've been called to call this foolishness out, especially when it comes to religion and things of these, like, just stop. So, we got married. We did everything right. And things were still horribly wrong. And I missed so many red flags. Okay. And I didn't go into the relationship looking to qualify if this man had character. He had everything else on paper. He was a professional producer. He worked a radio show. Everyone in the community knew him as the good guy. So there were so many things I went into openly believing, and I didn't have the diamond sharp clarity. I didn't have the capacity to look at his character and weigh some things. So that felt like a failure. Then when the marriage started to deteriorate, that was the second part. I wasn't connecting that I came into the relationship thinking he was going to save me. How? like we do this because we're conditioned to believe this way, right? This relationship is going to be the thing that makes me complete. No, I make me complete on my own.
Yes.
Right? I'm the one that's in control of these things. Additional to then feeling trapped. And all of this got me to the point where at my worst, with my biggest, as part of my biggest failure, I lost my health. So the very thing I had depended on, being strong, being able to come and go as I wanted to, being able to do all of the things I wanted to, shifted, right? I went from the picture of health, and long flowing hair. I mean, you can see it's back, but it was to the point where I was a bald head scallywag. Okay. Hair was falling out. Okay. We can laugh now, right? It was not funny then, girl. It was a mess.
Oh
okay.
God.
Right. So I went from full head of hair, long hair down my back, to hair being stripped, falling out in patches. It got so bad I lost 40 pounds in a month. I went from being able to eat and consume anything to not being able to eat beans or rice. I had some meats I was developing allergies to. I had begun to develop allergies to metals, touching doorknobs, right? I would eat spinach and break out in rashes inside of my mouth. Okay, like my body, as I knew it, was deteriorating. And it's because I had gotten into the habit of denying myself, my thoughts, my feelings, right? But that was the pattern set from when I was a child. Remember, be seen, not heard, not felt, right? Not stewarded. And because it was all the boys around, I got very used to boys being physically present, not emotionally. So I learned to deny that part of myself as well. So that carried on into the marriage, and it just got worse. At its worst, I had dropped about 40 pounds in a month. I was down to a size 2. And in my teen years, I was no smaller than a size 6.
Wow.
Okay. So on top of not being able to consume normal foods and do the normal things I had been used to, my heart rate was out of control. I was in and out of the hospital, anxiety attacks, actual issues with my heart, to the point it was at 160 beats a minute. Okay. Wow. And so the whole time I'm sitting there like, what is happening? The doctors don't have answers. No one is breaking down what's happening. And at some point they were like, there's nothing else we can do for you. So now I'm sitting in the midst of all this chaos, believing I did it right, watching how everything has gone wrong. Now I have a 2-year-old running circles around me, and I can't even get myself out of bed by myself.
Wow.
Talk about failure on top of failure on top of failure.
Wow.
And so all of this happened after I started my very first business, which was event planning. So not only did that happen, but I lost the business after about 2 years of building a large name in South Florida. So again, compound pain, loss, failure. Imagine you're hearing me share this now, but no one had any idea that that's what I went through. And I haven't even begun to unpack the chaos that was my childhood. Let's just stick with
Wow.
adulthood and this particular failure.
Wow.
And so again, we don't know the depths of the experience, right? Sometimes we think we have a real idea. That person may not have the words for it, but this is why it's important to hold space for people, right?
Yeah.
This is why it's important not to compare and contrast, because we don't know exactly what they went through. But
Yeah.
maintaining empathy and compassion, and again, not comparing what we hear someone tell us, because some people aren't telling us everything. They're
Yeah.
telling us the stuff that maybe most can digest, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And allowing everyone's pain threshold to be their own, and to stop comparing on that end, but to go deep into clarifying what that is for you. What's going to come of this pain? This is what I always tell my students. Don't waste your pain. You went through that experience.
Yes.
Is something good going to come out of it?
That is my mantra right there. I love it.
You know,
Don't
and so
waste your pain.
it's
so
huge.
Good.
It's huge. And that's the thing that spurs women like you on, that spurs women like me on to do the thing we're doing right now. To have the difficult conversations, right? To share the parts that people normally don't perceive, right? And in that, they're having a reckoning. They're getting the closure. They're recognizing, if Sabrina and Candace can do this after all they've been through, I can do this too.
Yeah.
And it's a whole dynamic transformation and change that's happening with every single step. And you're giving yourself grace for it, right?
Yeah.
You're allowing yourself to experience peace. You're allowing yourself to process the pain. And that's why distance isn't the thing that qualifies that. Neither does anything else. It's just, this is my story, and I'm going to own every part of it. And I'm going to do every single thing that I can with it. And those who want to hear it, I'm giving them the space to earn that right from me. And then those who don't, they're not going to be a part of my community at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Changes everything.
Yeah. Absolutely. Obviously, from this conversation, you are a fan of self-development and personal growth.
Mm-hmm.
What's your thought process for other people who, are kind of like, really? Self-development? That's what we're doing now?
You know what? What's interesting is they're immediately coming up with so much resistance because they've gotten used to the power that comes from the anger of even having to deal with it.
Yeah.
Right? But if we were to scratch the surface of anger, we'd uncover grief. We'd uncover the fact that they were not in environments that taught them how to cope. And so naturally, they're going to resist the idea of something coming to them that they can't associate with, that they don't understand, right? That also comes from pride, right? There's some ego and entitlement happening there. Why do I have to do all of this to get to the... Do you want the change? Do you want the transformation? Okay, then. Clearly, if without self-development, you haven't been able to get there, you're going to have to open up your mind and heart in such a way that it makes room for you to take in something different and then move forward, right? But a lot of us are terrified of our curiosity. A lot of us don't want to do the digging, right? So we're going to find ways to disqualify or resist the conversation before we even begin, right? As coaches, we know this, right? We have to navigate where a person is. We got to meet them where they are. And this also happens to visionaries, right? We are very future focused. We love growth. We love contribution. But the idea of being stuck in the present to work through something, being in the messy middle, is discouraging. And it's the thing that keeps us from going after what we see in reality in the future. Yeah. So again, that resistance to doing things differently, taking in different information means that you need to scratch behind that surface of, what am I resisting? Like, why is it that I have an aversion to this? And it might be a pattern. It might be something in the family that was passed down that you're just now encountering for the first time in this way, right?
Yeah.
It could be a number of things, but anytime somebody is shutting down something before they've really gotten to know it, something is happening with ego and entitlement.
Yeah. 100%.